Good afternoon, everyone, or good late morning if you're on the West Coast. My name's Tim Serantonio. I'm Director of Strategic Partnerships here at Neon One. Just want to welcome you to a little bit of FaceTime with you before I share the screen and start the recording. Yes, things will be recorded. We're going to go over some general housekeeping items in just a moment, but we're just hitting top of the hour at 2 o'clock. We're going to give maybe things, we had a lot of registrants for today, so I want to get people just a moment to get settled in and really hope that you're having a good start to 2020. And I'm really excited about today's presentation today. We got a lot of great things we're going to cover. We're going to have a great conversation with our Neon One Consultant of the Year. Actually, we wanted to start off with our Consultant of the Year. And what I'm going to do is go ahead and, let's see, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Oh, there is no presenter. I am the presenter. Okay, so I am going to go ahead and turn off the webcam. Michael Buckley, can you confirm that you can see my screen?
I can see your screen. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Okay. Well, what we're going to do is we are recording, so we're going to go ahead and dive in and just going to kind of handle a few housekeeping items as we get started. There is Q&A. There is also a chat. So in terms of the questions, that's where we'll be focusing in for our Q&A, but we might be sharing some resources in the chat. Our team is actually going to be able to respond in that way. So would love to even have conversation going in terms of what you're interested in around technology, questions that you are worried about or wondering about. We're going to go ahead and dive in. First and foremost, some of course wonderful webinar housekeeping items to make sure that you folks are comfortable with what we're doing today. First and foremost, yes, we are recording this. This is being recorded currently, and then we'll be putting this up on our YouTube channel. So Neon One webinars are always going to be something that you can review after the fact. We have a lot of exciting information that we're going to be packing into today's presentation. So we are going to be following up. We have a poll that we're going to be asking to kind of kick things off, but we also do have a survey to learn about your interest. And then we also do have some really cool resources that we're going to be sharing as well. I did have somebody say if they're having any trouble with the audio, hopefully you can hear me fine. Mike, tell me if I seem like I'm wobbly or something like that, or maybe my team can let me know too. But trying to make sure that things are good when it comes to audio. How's my audio, Mike?
I hear you loud and clear.
Okay, well, maybe if we want to pop into the chat to confirm so I'm not worried, that would be helpful to me. I'll pay attention to the chat just if somebody wants to pop in. Can you hear me fine? Then let me know. Otherwise, I'm going to assume that things are hunky-dory overall. A little bit about who is actually putting on today's webinar. So if you haven't heard of Neon One, that's who we are. Neon One is a technology and services ecosystem that is empowering social impact for over 35,000 mission-driven organizations throughout the world. And so what we're going to be doing is diving into just general management around technology today. But when it comes to the specifics of what Neon One does, we provide a bunch of different stuff. Neon CRM is a constituent relationship management system used by thousands of organizations. I myself have used it for years, and we're going to do a very, very small preview of that a little bit later on, but we also do client case management, giving days, peer-to-peer fundraising, arts and ticketing, web studio for websites, and of course we work with our larger ecosystem. Kind of the big idea of Neon One is that all of these things need to be integrated, all of these things need to be working in concert in a curation specific to the nonprofit industry. So that's what this is. Big part of that is also working with software as well as consultants who understand nonprofits. and that's why I'm excited to have our speaker join us today. We're going to get into introductions very, very shortly, but first, what are we actually going to be talking about today? So do some very, very quick introductions to kind of set the table of who we are and why we're even qualified to be talking about today's topic. Then we're going to get into the importance of retention for your organization, some important facts when it relates to retention, which is just very easily defined as somebody gave to you in 2018, and then they came back and gave to you in 2019. That is a retained donor. And so the goal is to get them to come back again in 2020. And so we have a lot of different data that's been coming in, a lot of resources that we're going to be seeing, a lot of statistics that are going to be going out soon. So we want you to get prepared. And our value proposition today for you is we're going to zero in on the role that technology can play when it comes to showing that people that you care, that they should come back, and the data management itself. And then we have some tactical tips as it relates to one of our flagship products, Neon CRM. That's not going to take a lot of time, but we think it's important to take the larger strategies and apply them in a very practical way for your everyday life. I personally find that whenever I attend a webinar, I'm always wondering, okay, so now what do I do? And so we want to show you what you can actually do with some of the things that we provide. But again, oh, good. And everybody says I'm loud. So thank you. Thank you. I know I am. Who is talking today? So my name's Tim Sarantonio, Director of Strategic Partnerships here at Neon One. I've actually been with the company. Neon CRM is where I started back in 2011, but before that, I had a long and fun career as a fundraiser. Raised over the course of my career so far about $3 million for various organizations of various sizes. So that's a little bit about me, got a lot of background in different technology as well. And then I'm very excited to welcome Michael Buckley from the Killoe Group, who, as mentioned, if you check out neon1.com under our resources section, we have our Partners of the Year for 2019, and Michael was our Consultant Partner of the Year. So tell us a little bit about you, Mike.
Well, I think, Tim, as the saying goes, it's an honor just to be nominated, but thank you for that. So good afternoon or good late morning, everybody. As Tim said, my name is Mike Buckley. I run my own nonprofit consulting firm called the Killoe Group. I've been doing this now for a handful of years, but before that, spent over 20 years as a professional fundraiser in nonprofits. I love helping organizations build sustainable revenue engines. And by that, I mean looking at the data that you have at your organization to grow your regular giving program. We'll talk about this a little bit more, but certainly dollars help you make your goal, but I think donors help your organization to grow and to become sustainable. So I'm very proud to also share I started as a student phone-a-thon caller at my alma mater, and it has been quite a ride. And thank you, Tim, and the team at Neon One for this opportunity this afternoon.
Awesome. Well, welcome, and I think we're going to be able to showcase a lot of the strategies that we've both used over the years to help grow our own respective organizations. Also, another resource for you, and there's some really good stuff within today's deck today, is handouts. There is a handout that you can download, and that actually is important later on because we got some goodies for you. We're debuting a brand new partnership benefit for being part of the Neon One ecosystem. So gonna showcase that a little bit later on. But first, a poll question. All right, Mike, I am excited for this one. What do you think the answer is going to be? Which is, do you know your organization's donor retention rate? Do you know what your retention was in general? For your organization. So the answers possible are yes, yes, but not confident in the number, and no. So far, we've had a few votes. Love to get that number up. There we go, there we go, there we go. Okay, thank you very much for everyone who's voting. Want to know if you know your retention rate. So we are hovering around, in terms of the no's, around what, spoiler, what the overall donor retention rate is in the industry. So awesome. Okay, we're at over 50%. I'm going to see if we can get to 60. Oh, we are rocking it. I'm going to close this down in just a moment. Okay, I think we're good. I think we're good. Okay, so let's go ahead and share this. in terms of, do you know your organization's retention rate? We're going to talk about this. Maybe Michael, you could talk about how you can even think about calculating retention if you're not sure, but 17% of respondents said that they do know their retention rate. 41% said they do, but they're not confident in the number. And then coming in even at another 41% is no. So Mike, when you see that, when you hear that, what is the first thing that you're thinking in terms of what that represents for today's audience?
Well, generally speaking, I'm not surprised by the response, but it does make me a little sad on the inside. I think donor retention is really where it's at, and we'll talk about this momentarily. But I hope the organizations that do not know their donor retention rate, if there's one thing that you leave from this session today, it's go and figure it out. And very simply, it's the number of donors who gave to you in 2018 versus the number of donors who gave to you in 2018 and 2019. Donor retention, it's important to care about donor retention because it speaks to the overall health of your program. You know, I've been in different positions in nonprofits across over a number of years, and yes, dollar goals are always good, but donors are what is going to help you sustain your organization. So really think about donor retention. Certainly this entire presentation is about how to have a positive effect on donor retention, but know what that number is. Industry-wide, we keep about 42% of our donors year over year. We'll dig into that a little bit more in a second, but think about what that means. That means that for every 100 donors at your organization, only 42 stay with you next year. So think about that. It speaks to the health of your program. It also allows you to predict revenue. We'll talk about that in a little bit too. But it's also, the good news is it's relatively easy to impact both positively and negatively.
I would say, akin, if anybody watches the show The Profit on CNBC, it's when they say that if you solely base your business off of profit and loss statements, okay, how much money did we bring in and how much money did we lose this year? If you only look at that, you're not getting the full story of how successful. And for nonprofits, it's even more impactful because we're not a business, right? That's the big debate. Are we businesses? Are we whatever? We can learn from things in the business world, but nonprofits have their own unique elements that we think are very important to kind of dive into, especially when it comes to retention and when it comes to technology. So that's what we're going to address head on today. Now, in terms of the technology side of things, we think retention is extremely important to look at, and we're going to share some really impactful numbers coming up. But the reality is that our technology strategy is something that we think is very important to start paying more attention to and more investment in. Not necessarily even from a monetary standpoint, but just from a mental standpoint. Overall, if we're going to have one takeaway for you besides please go look at your own donor retention rate and think about that, when it comes to the technology side of strategy, we don't want you to come away and say, well, Neon One says use more technology junk. No. It's the complete opposite of what we want you to say. What we want you to do is look at your overall fundraising strategy and see where you can be more efficient when it comes to technology supporting things. You're actually going to be surprised about how often we're going to talk about things like direct mail, or we're going to talk about things like phone calls or handwritten notes, okay? So there's going to be a lot of analog elements that technology can help optimize. And so overall, when it comes to your strategy, it's important to step back and say, what is driving your current strategy? Are you being led by initiatives that aren't necessarily zeroing in on things like donor retention, which is one of the most important metrics that you should be paying attention to? And then also, what are the outcomes? What's the automation in terms of, can your technology effectively automate things that you're doing manually? And work toward the integration of data when it comes to making decisions. One of the biggest things that you can do is think about integrated systems, both from a technological integration as well as a process integration standpoint. So your technology strategy is something that is going to be a real big investment that you can make in 2020. Okay. So when we move forward in terms of the recession, we're hearing more and more about the potential of a recession. We want to kind of share some important facts of where we are as it relates to the nonprofit industry. We're not economists, but we are fundraisers, so we're going to give our perspective when it comes to that. So Michael, what are you seeing when it comes to the donor retention crisis as it relates to overall economic trends?
Yeah, keep in mind that whether the forthcoming recession, and certainly if Tim and I knew when that was, we wouldn't be doing this webinar right now. Whether it's coming or not is certainly up for, when it's coming, I should say, is up for debate. But at some point, we're going to see something negatively affect our economy. And as nonprofits, I think we have to be prepared for it. I've been doing some research about what happened during the last recession to giving. Just keep in mind that from 2000 to 2016, there were 20 million less households who gave. 20 million less households or gave in 2016 versus in 2000. And the average household giving amounts have actually not increased, but nor have they also decreased. So that means to us that giving is staying pretty stagnant. It's not growing in leaps and bounds. I'm always amazed when I walk into client sites and executive directors say to me, my board wants me to raise 25% more next year. It's probably not going to happen. It's not a realistic expectation. And the other thing that we have to realize is that we have yet to figure out the true implications of the 2017 tax reform. There is a lot of research out there saying it's not having a big effect. Then there's other research saying it will have a big effect. So just know that that has really been yet to realize. But there's certainly a recession coming. We don't know how big it's going to be, and we should be prepared to sustain our organization through it. And donor retention is how we do it.
One of the things that we do have at our disposal at Neon One is direct insight on a monthly basis into donor giving trends. So we are part of the Fundraising Effectiveness Project, which is the largest individual data set of donor data in the world. And we populate this in an anonymized and encrypted way. And there is some questions in terms of what are we seeing in terms of the tax law, what are we seeing in terms of overall retention rates. And while we have yet to see the impact of Q4, what we did see is in the first 9 months of 2019 compared to 2018 in the same period, the number of participating donors was down 3.6%, while revenue declined 4.6%. So if this continued into Q4, and people way smarter than me think it has, I'm on the steering committee. I get to at least listen to the smart people when it comes to this stuff. And what they think is that if this continued, then we lost $20 billion compared to the $427 billion that we saw in 2018. And this actually has a really big impact when it comes to small donors versus mid-sized and major donors. So we're going to get a little bit into that, but typically it's the small donors that we're seeing are actually leaving our organization. So when we get into strategies around recurring giving, for instance, know that that's probably the best way to stem that tide, as an example from a strategic standpoint. Okay, so.
And can I actually just, before we advance, just dig in a little bit on donor retention. We talked about that in the beginning, that industry average says about 42% of your donors are staying with you year over year. So for every 10 donors you had in 2019, you can expect 4 to stay with you. Adrian Sargent, who's done some phenomenal research on this topic, found out that about for every 38 of those 100 donors, they will leave your organization because they believe you don't care about them. It's not because they've lost their job. It's not because they've moved. It's not because of some other reason you made them angry or something. 38 out of the 100 donors will leave your organization because they think you don't care about them, which is a very simple fix, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit as well.
And actually, the new donor retention rate compared to just overall retention rate is even worse. It's like maybe 18%. So it's very important to also engage people who are first being introduced to your organization. Those acquisition costs typically cost your organization, for every dollar that you bring in, about $1.25. So the thing is that if your board hears that type of number, they might freak out. But in reality, if you retain that donor, the lifetime value of that person increases exponentially the longer you keep them. So this is why retention is so important, because it costs a lot of money to get a new person. Now, when it comes to those types of things about showing that you care, showing that you can reattain them, and showing that you can just overall manage the data, what we want to do is get into the meat and potatoes of today's presentation and dive into how does technology relate to engagement and retention. In order to modernize our donor relationship strategy, we're going to start with using technology to show donors that you care. So the way that we're going to do this in the presentation today is, first, we're going to talk about a few key high-level concepts that have relatable applications, and then we're going to do a deeper dive into a specific example of one that relates to each section. So we have 3 sections. We're going to start with showing you care. So Mike, I know that you love working with platforms that engage video and stuff like that. So why don't you start off with the video stewardship example to showcase how we can use technology to show that we care.
Yeah, video is where it's at. 20 some odd years ago when I started in this field, there was talk about email and how email would change how we raised dollars for nonprofits. I think video is where we're at right now. If you can use your iPhone or your webcam on your computer to just record a very simple thank you video to your donors. There's some platforms out there that will do higher level things, allow you to personalize those videos and things of that nature. But if you're working in animal welfare, especially, the power of video is very strong. The ability to just take a video of the adoption floor and send a thank you video out. Folks are opening them, and they're sharing them with other people, which is very impactful. So if you're not using video, certainly start doing it. It could be something as I hesitate to use the term boring, but it's not as exciting as your executive director just sending a personalized video. But send a video, it shows. They're opening them up at greater rates than anything else.
And we're seeing this application in a lot of different ways across a lot of different events too, because we do a lot of work with giving days, for instance, with our Civicor platform. And one of the most interesting things that I've seen is live streaming the event itself. So we have a consultant named Chris Strub, for instance, the Giving Day guy, where he actually goes around and interviews people who are doing the Giving Day. And it's kind of like running around, and he's going all over the city and engaging people. And it's like really cool to see that live, right? You can do this with Facebook, you can do this with YouTube. And then there's other applications where it's more stewardship and more personalized too, to thank donors. So there's a lot of different applications of this, which is really great. The next one is when we're seeing overall prospect and cultivation. And this is a little bit more one-on-one, where video, you might be reaching a broader audience or doing something personalized. Prospecting, major donor cultivation, especially given retention rates around major donors, which tend to be on the higher level because they're just a little bit more invested in the mission, you can argue. Making sure that you're identifying those people of who you should talk to, technology can help do this in a few different ways. So one of the things that we offer, for instance, is an app called Neon Moves, which is a on-the-go artificial intelligence-powered app that tells people, here are the top donors you should be paying attention to. The reality, though, is that you're still talking to somebody in person. Like, you're not going to use technology in this case to get a major donor across the line. Mike, you lived through this. This was your job. Where do you actually see, in terms of major donor cultivation, besides identification, where technology can help when it comes to major donors?
Well, certainly it's a great way to communicate, and people, major donors, long gone are the days where you could only make phone calls and you had to travel to see folks. So like we were saying before, the power of video, the power of email communication, but also knowing how, and that's just an example of knowing how your major donors want to be cultivated, sharing with them important information in ways they want to receive it. we all get mail still at our homes, and I'm always amazed at how impactful direct mail is nowadays. Years ago, email is where we were going. Now I think we're going back to direct mail. And if people are reacting, you need to start tracking how people are reacting. We'll talk about that in a little bit too. But people are expecting that you know about them way more than you actually know about them. So you've got to start gathering that data.
And we're going to get to that in the last section in terms of the gathering. And there was also a great question about social media that I think we can engage in our next section. But somebody asked about personalizing video, and overall, the more information that you have accurate about a person, the better that you can personalize your communication, including things like video, which is definitely possible. And so when you personalize things, your response rates go up by 50% minimum. And so you can automate gratitude in very simple ways, but we got to go beyond just the simple dear first name merge field, right? And so the ways that you can start to automate gratitude can be down to the campaign that somebody donated to, referring to the fact that they donated because of a specific campaign, previous giving history, or just trying to hit them in ways where it might be more of like, fine, I did my email receipt, but then following up with a nice handwritten note. When you actually do omni-channel gratitude, and this could be video, this could be print, this could be a phone call, this could be another piece of direct mail or a solid annual report that you send somebody. And when you show the donor that you're engaging them in multiple facets of how they consume media, then your retention rates actually go up. If you only rely on print, or if you only rely on email, your retention rates are not going to be as good. So finding ways that you can automate the gratitude process to get you quicker to telling a more personalized reason why you want to build a relationship with that donor, that's the key here. It's not necessarily relying on the technology itself. It's about getting it to where you can free up the time to make that personalization a reality. So let's actually zero in on that in terms of the thank you note process as a deeper dive. So let's go through a multi-step process of what an organization can do. First, donation comes in, probably going to be sent in through a check, especially if it's a major donor. So the person who's entering your gifts, who may not even be a fundraising professional, they can just be somebody who's working the desk and they're supposed to be opening the mail and entering things into the database. Well, once the check is actually entered into your system, or of course an online donation is made, you can send out an email that at least notifies the person the check has been received. Thank you very much. This is something that I struggled with other systems, but I know that there's certain CRMs, such as the NCRM, that no matter the tender, you can get an email sent out to the person, which I think is at least a good first step, but you can't stop there. Once the donation's entered, then you also can do things to set up your physical letter to reference the campaign that was actually donated to. Is it a capital campaign? Is it an end of the year appeal? Was it because of Giving Tuesday? And then this can actually be collated and structured to maybe have, depending on the gift level, which person is even going to sign it. The other piece here is creating activities for workflow automation to then follow up. So if it was over a certain size gift, you can use technology to actually say, okay, I need to have a note sent to the director of development to maybe have them make a phone call. So this is one of those things that if you have that Post-it note, like my last job when I was in the annual fund, I had, if it's a $5,000 gift, the head of schools is going to have a dinner. If it's a $2,500 gift, the director of development is going to reach out and set up a meeting. Those types of things. How can we get that off of a piece of paper and then me running a report every week and into at least an automated reminder element? And that's where the actions implementation comes into play, is setting up the system so you at least get these triggers to notify staff to act. So Mike, any kind of deeper dives on this in terms of the process that we were suggesting here?
No, I think your overview was really good. The only thing I wanted to add, and I actually came across this morning while reading something else, is for those of you in the field who are aware of Penelope Burke, she's a very well-respected individual who speaks a lot about donor stewardship. And in 1997, so almost 25 years ago, believe it or not, she picked up on 3 common wants of donors, and that's to be acknowledged promptly for their gift, to see their gift assigned to a specific actionable area of focus, and to be appraised of the progress their gift has helped make. So keep those 3 things in mind when you're automating gratitude. It's not just a thank you card. You're building that relationship with your donor to retain them year over year.
And somebody actually brought up a good point, which is how should you cultivate donors in terms of retention? Too much communication can turn people off. When you hear that, what do you think when it comes to stewardship in particular?
I think there's no such thing as too much communication. There's too much asking, there's too much solicitation, but there's not enough communication. If everything you do, I always advise my clients at Thanksgiving time to send out thank you cards to all their donors. It's a thank you, thanks for giving, that's it. There's no envelope in it. There's nothing in it. It's just a very simple thank you touch point. I don't believe that there's anything as too much communication. For every individual you're hearing say, stop sending me the emails, how many of those people are reading your emails word for word and growing closer to your organization? So don't let one person stop you from communicating.
I love that in terms of the distinction between also communication and solicitation, which I think is a very important distinction. Yes, you can have too much solicitation. No, you don't. You can always communicate, because communication implies a two-way conversation as well. Love that. Love that. So then what about reattraction? We're talking a lot about retention. So what can we get into when it comes to, for instance, reacting to donor behavior, which is kind of following up what you were just talking about, by the way?
Yeah, it's a perfect follow-up to that. And it used to always sort of bother me when I started in this field early, when folks would say to me, well, I don't give in May, I always give in June. And I thought, well, can't you just give in May and save us all the aggravation of coming back to giving to you in June? But the reality is that in nonprofits, we so often say that these are our donors. And the reality is that they're not our donors. We are the charity that they choose to support. And if they want to choose to support that in July during the full moon, then so be it. Some really good organizations, some high-level national nonprofits know a lot of information, a lot of metrics about their donors, and they know when they're more likely to give. They know what areas of town are most likely to give. You can really get high level, but one of the best ways to reattract donors is to inform them, last year this time you made a gift to us, would you consider doing that again? React to donor behavior, and people appreciate knowing that you're paying attention to them.
Yeah. And my personal favorite report in the whole world is the Libun report. It last year, but unfortunately not this year. And being able to say, okay, we look at all the people that came in May, right? And that's even funny when we start thinking about end of the year giving, right? Where 31% of gifts typically come in December. Well, how can we move that back? I know that we call it the giving season, but philanthropy can be year round if you're communicating well. And a big reason and a big way that you can do that is through storytelling. So this is where somebody's question about social media comes into play. And so leveraging communication tools to communicate your impact is important. And this is something that I've been obsessively talking about left and right. I'm on Twitter, talking about impact. And I think that we can represent our stories in a way that doesn't misrepresent our impact. A lot of times we're going to be doing appeals and it's going to come off as implying like you're going to help this one dog here, right? Like this is the dog that you're going to help. And that's not the story that we want to tell. What we want to do is use the dog as a larger narrative of what your mission represents. And we can do this in a wide variety of medium. You can do this through social media. You can do this through websites, emails, personalized print communications. I think a big key here is one of the things that you have to do is step back and figure out who you are. Not what you do, who are you as an organization? Why do you exist? What is your unique value proposition? If you know who you are, then you can turn around and you can empower your board members, your staff members, your volunteers, and your donors to also then champion that same story too. So that's a little bit more abstract in some ways. But so Mike, give us a little bit more meat in terms of storytelling and technology.
What we're really talking about here is conversational marketing. I think since we've seen a massive decline in the number of households who are donors, we know that our donors are smarter and they're getting more selective in the nonprofits they give to. So think about conversational marketing. And by that I mean not just pushing information on people, but sending videos and asking them to engage with a video of their own. So if it's animal welfare, because that's an easy thing to relate to, and it's a world I've done work in. If you're sending out videos of adoptable animals, ask your recent adoptees to send back video of theirs, post on your Facebook page, on social media. It's causing donors to get closer to your organization. So think about it as conversational marketing. Every annual plan should have some aspect of conversational marketing in it.
I think in this overall technology, we need to get back to the core essence of what the beauty of technology represents for our world, which is bringing us closer together, right? We're getting so distracted by the noise that if we get back to what we're supposed to be doing, which is actually connecting and building a relationship with someone, then technology opens up and is beautiful. Now, at the same time, it should also make our lives easier. So one of the other key things is your donors, if it's difficult to actually give you money, won't give you money, or they're less likely to give you money. So make giving easy. Meet donors where they want to be. Easy one to do that is make sure that they can give a recurring gift online, potentially even default the checkbox to recurring giving. They can shift it themselves. Don't misrepresent it. They don't like that. That's not good communication. But make it easy for them to set up a recurring gift. Recurring donations have a 80% retention rate, and actually data by Erica Wasdorf has showed that recurring donors are very, very more likely to become a legacy donor as well. And so credit card processing has made this much easier. A lot of CRMs have the forms built in for auto entry into the back end of the database. You can also have donor covered fees that are auto calculated. These are things that should be easy to set up for your organization. If they're not, then you should be looking at ways to make that easy for your donors. But that also extends out into other areas of how people give: peer-to-peer, events, checks. Just make it easy. Do you have on your website where somebody can send you a check? Like, do you have an address that says send checks here, care of, and put the person's name? Don't just put the organization, put the actual person that they know is going to be receiving the check. Make it easy and communicate that very clearly. Somebody asked actually, a semantics question. I love these, Mike. Before we dive into our deeper one, do you call ongoing recurring gifts or sustaining gifts?
I could certainly go either way. I think sustaining, I think we have to look at what we were calling the annual fund as our sustaining gifts. So I would call them recurring gifts.
And even though I have personal extensive experience back in the annual fund, there's even some very interesting conversations going around just that term, because of just siloing it in 1 year, as opposed to we want to create a longer term. What's that?
It's a bad term.
It's a bad term. I know. Yeah. And I wrote a whole book on it, and that's not great for me. But the example that we're going to dive into when it comes to technology is monthly donors. So those sustaining donors, monthly donors, we're going to kind of use those interchangeably for this example. So over here, if we look at the fact that somebody makes a donation online, they're going to receive a confirmation of that. Then you can use technology to remind the development director that a month away, to go ahead and update this monthly donor on the impact that their gift has started to help project out. If you have recurring gifts, you can then accurately project out that, hey, we know that this is how much money we're going to get from this person this year. So great. This is what we're going to be able to do with that. And then you can also then do a customized email to do like a newsletter for your monthly donors. There's also a lot of things that you can do to just specifically target these people. These people should have their own dedicated communications plan, and it should be omni-channel if we go back to what we were talking about before. Okay, so, and somebody's asking about how do we do this with Neon? We're definitely going to talk about that, but we want to get to our last section when it comes to using technology to obtain and retain data. And so putting structures in place to ensure long-term success. Mike, I'm going to hand this section to you in terms of how do we actually, what data should we be thinking about collecting, and then I'll handle omni revenue engagement.
I would say that there isn't any data point that you shouldn't be thinking about getting and putting into your database, and that is certainly the most generic of demographic data, home address, so on and so forth. But things like birthday, and or birth month and birth date, you don't have to get year. You should, but you don't have to. Children's names. Again, animal welfare, to use that as a reference, pets' names, vacation spots, anything that allows you to sort of craft a picture of what your retained donor looks like, how often they give, when they give. Look for trends in your data. And I know that most of the folks on the webinar are thinking, that's all well and good. I don't have 3 days in my life to go through and look for trends in my data. But spend a little bit of time and think about who's giving to you. Do they live in a certain part of town? Are they a certain gender? Are they a certain age group? So get those relationships, those interests, that demographic data. Certainly think about who knows who in your database, who are classmates, who are serve on committees together. Whatever little anecdotal piece of information that you can get, you should get it and be housing in your database. Certainly, if you're prospecting for data using, I know Donor Search is a great tool out there, so is iWave. Prospecting, looking at income. Are your average donors of a high net worth? Are they not of a high net worth? And are they giving to you? Are they giving to other causes? Certainly the best way to do this is to have one-on-one individual conversations with your donors. I know that's not realistic, but think about finding 5 or 10 within the next month. Take them for a cup of coffee and ask them why they give to your organization. You'd be really surprised at the responses.
Yeah, and you can use technology to make sure that those are scheduled correctly too.
Yeah.
Just use a calendar tool. But the other thing here is that people like to give in a variety of ways. They like to feel that they're making an impact in different ways. And so we can think about omni revenue engagement as well using technology. We're seeing a rise of things like peer-to-peer fundraising and do-it-yourself fundraising. There's, of course, giving events that might happen in your community. The gala, we can talk a lot about that and its impact and its effectiveness, but people still like to go to places and go out on the town and do something fun. And then you can also take a look at how you can modernize your legacy giving programs. There's a lot more emphasis being focused on either the collateral, the materials that people receive, maybe updates. A lot of times organizations, they might even get a pledge for a legacy gift, and then they just never talk to that person again, and they just assume that that person's going to die and give them the money. Don't do that. So when you think about legacy giving, think about how you can use technology to cultivate and engage and energize that person later on. So there's just many different ways that we can build on the foundations and the basics that we've been talking about here. One of the ways that you can leverage technology in a very practical way, for instance, within the Neon One universe, is peer-to-peer fundraising donations coming in from our Rallybound platform. Those donations get auto-synced into Neon CRM as either a donation or an event registration, and then the iWave data prospecting system can analyze those records and then push back wealth prospect data right into Neon CRM. And so this is one of the ways that we actually think that we go a little extra by figuring out how the data works in concert with each other on your behalf. A lot of times you have to sit there and figure this out. With us, we said, okay, here's all the fields that make sure that all of this works together, and it just kind of works in concert. So this is a way that you can use multiple data sources to really come and rally around your database of truth. All right, so got some really good questions coming in. What I want to do is, we did have a question, how does this practically relate to Neon CRM? And so what I want to do is just kind of take us out of the deck and go into a very practical, short overview of what you can do within Neon CRM itself. And I'm going to zero in on two areas. So we're looking at Neon CRM. This is a cloud-based system that supports thousands of organizations. And so two things that I want to talk about are retention itself in terms of the metrics, and let's focus in on recurring donations. So the dashboards themselves do actually have a full fundraising effectiveness project KPI, or key performance indicator, calculation in there. So if you're trying to figure out what the formula is for retention, it actually defines that for you. And so you can turn this off, you can make this smaller, but we've built in all the retention rate calculation on your organization's behalf. You just turn on the system and it's already doing this. But then you can actually do this specific to donor retention stats. You can actually go and just click in and see a report of all the people that you've retained, for instance. And then there I am. I can get a kind of a deeper insight into those people. Good to go. Let's talk about recurring donations. So recurring donations is another area that's important to use technology to help automate. So this is one simple thing where the system's flagging that there's a failure on the person's account, and maybe we should go and engage that person. This is a very simple way that technology can be used to streamline your recurring donations. Now, this is in the back end. There's a lot of things that the system has when it comes to an online donation, for instance, that you can configure to say, this is a recurring gift. I want to thank this person differently than somebody who only gave a single gift, and I want to thank them because they gave over a certain amount on a monthly basis. So being able to kind of drill into this and understand this is a way that you can either get a very kind of high level detail or a very drilled down detail on something like recurring giving. But the ways that you can even engage this once you start to know somebody and start to cultivate somebody is also through that activity automation. So maybe you want to set up a workflow that automatically has an activity that reminds a staff member that they should do some sort of follow-up. That's a really, really powerful way that you can start to think about merging your processes with your technology. A lot of the actual phone calls, a lot of the actual meetings, that's going to have nothing to do with technology. And so what we're saying to focus on is, great, how do I know what I should prioritize? What did I miss? These are things that you want to get out of the Post-it notes. You want to get out of the calendar reminders on Google that have a long list that says do this, and then it's just a description with a bunch of words in it. Use the CRM to actually help engage that. And so you can get a nice comfortable view, even use this as the list to work down. These are a few practical things that you can use within the database, or if you want to actually update things in a really quick way, okay, I actually need to reassign this. I'm going to be out of the office. Let me go over and put that Aaron's going to actually be working on this, something like that. Or that, you know what, I got through my calls, I'm done, great, let me update the status. So you could do these, you can use technology to do a lot of different things, but even some automated reminders are going to be very useful either in the system or through your email. That's just a little bit of a snapshot. Again, this is not a deep dive into the CRM. We wanted to just tie some practical elements of what we talked about today into how you might engage on an everyday basis with your tech. Mike, before we kind of start shifting into Q&A, any other thoughts when it comes to how you can use technology practically on an everyday basis?
No, I was just going to add that at the end of the day, don't forget you actually have to do it. So technology is great, and it will tell you what to do. And even if you choose to have a thank you video platform, you still have to do it. So don't allow you or your teams to be so overwhelmed by all of what's in Neon CRM, which is great, because they then still have to do it. So yes, you can click a box and say you called, but you can only do that if you actually called.
Exactly. And there was some questions from either people who are exploring Neon or might be current Neon CRM users. And one of the things that I also want to encourage you to check out is not only the support center, but when you log in, you can actually get access to Neon One Academy. And Neon One Academy is utterly free for any Neon One organization, as well as anyone exploring. This is the revolutionary thing, that we made Neon One Academy utterly free for anyone who, even if you're not using our system. And that's really important, because a lot of times your organization might be asked to pay for very expensive training, and we thought that that wasn't fair. So if you want to just get some really good overviews, kind of understand this, then you can go ahead and kind of dive in and actually, just if you want to even search for how do I train and certify in Neon CRM, check it out. You'll be able to learn not only about Neon One, but the larger Neon CRM training track that we have for free. Of course, we have deeper dives and more personalized trainings for your organization too. Speaking of trainings, one of the things that we're going to be doing this year is rolling out a deeper partnership with the Nonprofit Leadership Alliance. And so for anybody attending today's webinar, check out courses.leaderosity.org. This is top of the line curriculum designed by some of the brightest minds in the nonprofit world, and you're going to be able to get a discount off of any of their trainings. This is a brand new partnership that we're rolling out. It's going to be around best practices for how to run your organization, finance, just general structure of your fundraising programs. So you get a discount. This is our gift for you in terms of attending today's webinar. We're really grateful for that. So we're going to dive into some Q&A, and also that is in the deck. So if you click download the handouts, you'll be able to check that out, go look at some things. So Mike, let's dive in. We got about 10 minutes for some solid Q&A, which I've seen. All right. So how can we utilize social media to reach major donors? Okay, I think that's a little bit of a spin off of the way we answered it before. So Mike, how can we use social media to engage existing major donors?
Certainly by showing impact. I think that you can use your social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and there's thousands of others out there, to make sure that you're showing the impact of their gift, or you're cultivating them towards making that gift. Don't, when people say social media, Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and Snapchat, which I know is one of Tim's favorites, come to mind. But don't forget LinkedIn. There's a lot of good. LinkedIn is not exactly where nonprofits are right now, but that's where business leaders are. So think about positioning yourself as the thought leader and the smartest person or group doing whatever you do on LinkedIn. That's connecting you to a different business audience. So as I said, don't forget LinkedIn, but certainly using video, talking about impact. You want major donors to also be sharing what you're posting on social media, because more often than not, they are connected or friends with people in their sphere. So encourage them to share, but certainly be showing video. That's where video comes in. We've all spent more time than we care to admit watching stupid cat videos. Everyone's doing it. Make sure your videos are on social media.
Yeah, and actually an interesting thing that I learned at other Neon One consultants, Julia Campbell's Nonprofit Social Media Summit last year, was that LinkedIn allows documents to be loaded into things. So your organization profile, if you had like an annual report, you can actually upload that and be able to have people look at it and interact with the actual platform itself, which is pretty cool in terms of like a PDF. You can go right to your page. So, okay, I'm going to ask another question. I'm answering some stuff in the Q&A for people, Mike. So I'm going to punt this to you while I answer some Neon CRM specific questions. What are the 3 common wants of donors again to be acknowledged, thanked, and what are the other 2?
So the 3 common wants is that donors want their gift to be promptly acknowledged. They want to see their gift assigned to a specific actionable area of focus, and they want to be appraised of how their gifts are making a difference.
I think those are pretty solid. And in your opinion, how do you think technology, if you're going to sum it up, what's a really good way that somebody can immediately start to implement a technological solution to do that?
Well, the timeliness of the acknowledgement, I think, is very important, and you can, if you can set a dollar amount threshold or a donor threshold, or we always talk about with thank you gifts, the amount of the gift drives the stewardship activity. Don't forget that the longevity of the gift also should drive the activity. If someone's been giving to you for 10 years, regardless of what that gift amount is, you should be calling and treating them differently than your average donor. So before that letter even goes out, you can still call people and say, the letter's in the mail, it will be shortly, but I saw your gift today and I wanted to be the first to thank you on behalf of our organization.
And this kind of follows up. There's a good question that somebody asked in terms of that kind of relates to that follow-up and engagement, which is around somebody's having trouble with getting people on board with the idea of monthly donations. So how would you address that kind of hesitancy?
I would say that the reality is, us in the nonprofit world, we shake at the thought of adding too much business sense into our nonprofits because, we want to be different. But the reality is that we all have a product, and whether we're selling it or we are changing the world, we have to think smartly. I am always amazed that Amazon seems to know that I'm running out of hair gel long before I know I'm running out of hair gel. So, that's just another way of saying we're reacting to consumer behavior. People are expecting to be able to give monthly, and if you don't have it, your competitor does.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then one final set question here, though we do have a little bit more time, though, if we want to let people go a tiny bit early. How can you use tech to engage legacy donors specifically?
So legacy donors are that can be a challenge because I think so often, as Tim said in the beginning, we hear that you're going to give us money when you're going to die, and then we just wait. Keep in mind that is not always, it should, God willing, be a long time in between when you find out you're in their estate plans and you actually realize the gift. Think you should be building relationships with your legacy donors and asking them how they want to be engaged with. Mm-hmm. Some of them don't want an email. Some of them don't want video. Some of them don't want to be taken out to lunch. So, the reality to that is that there's no one size fits all for legacy donors. These are long-term relationships that you're trying to build with these folks. But certainly, as I said before, I don't believe there's anything as too much communication. There's too much solicitation, but there's not too much communication. Get on a schedule of sending an email every other month or every quarter, and send a handwritten note every 6 months. Yep. But make sure using technology, and I think it's important to point out, we talk about using technology. It doesn't mean that technology is a vehicle that has to be used.
Yes.
You can just use technology to remind you to pick up the phone and make a phone call.
And that's the big takeaway, folks. At the 11th hour, and thank you. We've retained a lot of our audience, Mike, by the way, in terms of people checking it out. And that's the big takeaway we want you to have for today is technology is not an end in of itself. It is a tool. It is a set of tools. It is a stack of tools that ultimately you should be using to get you connected with people. So specific to legacy donors, maybe at the end of the day, you're still driving over and having coffee with somebody at their house, right? Maybe you're still physically handing them an annual report, but you might have used you know, a on-the-go app to quickly check their information before you went into the house. What was their last gift? What are their likes, dislikes? What are the custom tags that you have on that person? Who did they work for? Who do they know? Or maybe you used a report and identified that this person has been giving to your organization for 14 years and it's been all small gifts. Well, why? Good. A report showed me that this person who I don't really know that much about, let's dive in. Be curious. Technology can help you be more curious. That's the thing. All right, let's see if we got one more final question. Yes, there is a download of the slides under the handouts. There will be a recording. And somebody asked how to begin setting up a legacy giving program. Mike, do you have any consultants that might be good at helping set up a legacy or planned giver, planned giving program? Do you know anybody who might be good for that?
You know, I don't off the top of my head, but I certainly can give that some thought. I don't think you need a consultant to start. You can just put together some generic information about the benefits of, you know, making a will bequest and
Yep.
do a mailing to a particular demographic. You'd be very surprised what comes back. 80 some odd % of all legacy gifts are wills and bequests. So don't be intimidated by all the jargon that's out there for those higher level planned gifts.
And there's some really good resources like the gift planning group. You might have a local chapter in your community. AFP has some good stuff on this. Amy Eisenstein has some really great stuff on this. So there's a wealth of information out there that we would love to ensure that we connect you with. That's part of the Neon One curation too. So folks, we're at our hour. This was a lot of fun. You're going to get a survey asking about your interest learning more about Neon CRM. We'd love to follow up with you and see how we can power your own missions with technology for retention. But we're going to have some great webinars. One of the ones that we're going to be planning, for instance, is reconciliation with multiple revenue streams in the QuickBooks. We're going to be talking about peer-to-peer. We're going to be talking about a lot of great stuff this year. So we can't wait to really help grow your organization. And we'll see you soon. Have a great day.